Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we are going to be continuing on with our C# tutorial series, and in this tutorial we are actually going to get started with actually learning how C# works by setting up a project with both with Visual Studio and the .NET CLI, so everybody can kind of get an idea of how both ways work. I am not going to, however, be doing anything with the Mac. This is going to be specifically Windows. But when we get into Visual Studio for Windows, the process for creating a new project is relatively the same in Visual Studio for Mac, so you should be okay. Otherwise, you can create your project with the .NET CLI and then open the solution with your Visual Studio for Mac, and that'll work too. But so you can see here, I have a terminal window open. I have the text blown up so you guys can see it. Yeah, I will. In fact, I'll blow it up a little bit more here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create the actual project, or the actual folder that we're going to hold the project in. So I'm going to go to my D drive, and because this is a flash drive that I've got, we're gonna create our project on that. And so I'm going to create a folder called CS Tutorials, MKDIR CS Tutorials, like that. Okay. And so we are then going to go into that directory. Okay. And so now we're in that directory. Now, what I want you to do is to first run the command dotnet new sln. And so what this will do, what the .NET new sln command will do, is it will create a new solution file. And a solution file you can think of as a container for C#, Visual Basic, or F# projects. And it's how Visual Studio, when you open the solution, it's how it opens up all the other projects that are in that solution and displays them for you. Right? So, but we don't want to just do .NET new sln. We need to provide it a name. And to do that, we need to do -- name and give it a name. And its name should be something. It can just be anything, but I'm going to call this tutorial app. And then once you do that, hit enter. And if you typed out the command correctly, it should have template solution file was created successfully in your terminal. And so if we go ahead and do say tree./f, you can see tutorial app.sln is in our folder now. Now, one other thing that I'm going to do, you don't have to, but you can if you want, is I'm going to create what's called a Git Ignore file, because I am going to put all the source code for these videos on GitHub, so you guys can download the source code and test it all out. Right? So what we are going to do then is we are going to, we're going to say dot.net new git ignore. And what this command will do is, like I said, it'll create a git ignore file, and in this git ignore file, it'll house different rules for what files shouldn't be included in our remote Git repository. For example, let's say you're creating a web application and you have what's called a user secret for security reasons. You don't want that to be up on the public web. You don't want that to be up on your public remote repo. So stuff like that is going to be ignored when you have a git ignore file. Now let's go ahead and do that. Now we have our git ignore file. The next thing we want to do is actually create our C# project. And we are going to use a template called console. Now, the console template creates a basic C#.NET console project. So there's no like web components or anything like that for working with ASP. There's no Windows forms, no WPF, nothing. It's just a console application. So to do that, we can go ahead and do a dot.net space new console, and we're not done yet. Do a -o, and this will allow us to specify the output directory of our file. This directory doesn't have to exist. It will create the directory if it doesn't already exist. Right. So we can then say tutorial app and we can call this video tutorial app video 1. app video 1. Okay, so now go ahead and hit enter, and now we have our console application. But again, we're not done. Right now, our solution file knows nothing about our project, and if we try to open our solution, there won't be any project in there for us to edit and look at. So in order to do that, in order to add our project to our solution, we need to do a .NET sln add dot backslash and then just point it to the folder that your project is in. So in this case, tutorial app video 1. So what this will do, .NET sln will point, or will tell our solution file that's in our current working directory to add the project at the given path to it. So go ahead and hit enter. And so now our project is added to the solution. Exactly what we wanted. Now, of course, this isn't going to matter a whole lot if you're using Visual Studio Code to edit your project, because a solution, you can't open a solution in Visual Studio Code the same way you can in Visual Studio. But I do still recommend doing it because like if you have it up on your Git repo, people who actually use Visual Studio can then open up your project in Visual Studio. So even if it's not useful to you when you're editing your app in Visual Studio Code, still add your project to a solution file, so that way anybody else who comes and uses it can open it in their Visual Studio installation if they use it. Okay, so now that we've created our project, we can open the solution file. In Visual Studio. And I'm going to open my Explorer window. Okay, so now I'm in my File Explorer in the directory where the solution file is located. Right. And once that's finished, once that's open, we can go ahead and do, we can go and open with and you can see I have two installations for Visual Studio. I have 2019 and I have 2022. I have 2019 because in my college course that I'm taking on Visual Basic and ASP.NET Core, I need Visual Studio 2019 because my college isn't quite up at 2022 yet in terms of .NET usage. And then I have 2022 for my personal development. So we're going to open 2022. And you can see here we are. This is the Visual Studio IDE in Windows. And if we go to our Solution Explorer on the right-hand side of the window, you can move it to the left-hand side if you want, if you're more used to it being over there. But it's on the right-hand side in Visual Studio by default. Go ahead and expand your project, Tutorial App Video 1. And open program.cs. So the first thing that we can see in this C# file, program CS, which is the main entry point of every C# application, you can see we have what's called a comment. This tells us where we can go to find out more information about the console template. We're going to get rid of that comment because we don't need it. And then we have a single statement here when we delete that comment. And this is a console write line statement with hello world inside of it. And so what exactly does this do then? Well, the console write line allows you to write to the console. It allows you to output stuff to the console window. So if we go ahead then, you can see we have just this line of code. Go ahead and do a Control F5. Or you can go ahead and go up to, let's see, the build. And let's see, we want... Let's see, where is it? Okay, actually it's under the debug menu. You want start without debugging. So again, that's Control F5. And you can see now that when you run your console application, a console window will show up, and you can see it says "Hello World," and then we can hit any key to close the window. And there we go. So that pretty much does it for this video, guys, on kind of an introduction to well, actually, we're not quite done with the video yet. We talked about, so far we've talked about creating our C# project, and we've talked about opening things in Visual Studio and running them in Visual Studio, but we haven't actually talked about what C# even is. Well, to end off the video, C# is essentially Microsoft's premier, I guess, programming language. It's what they are currently actively developing, providing updates and support for. Visual Basic is another one of their programming languages, but VB.NET, as it's called now, is pretty much out of support, and Microsoft isn't supporting it anymore, but you can still use it if you want to with the current versions of .NET. It's just not getting any like new features or anything like that. It's kind of just there. And then F# is again another language that's primarily used for other purposes. It's not used for the same stuff C# is. But keep in mind that C# is their primary programming language that Microsoft uses. You can use it to develop Windows applications, Mac OS applications, Linux apps. You can use it to make mobile applications, games, all kinds of stuff C# can be used for. So we'll be actually learning the programming language itself in this series, and then in a later series we'll be looking at Windows forms, and then we'll be looking at WPF, and then we'll also look at ASP.NET Core, APIs, and MVC. So we'll be doing a lot of C# on this channel in the near future. So thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.